Moving on to the energy story, I wrote the book, The Flattening of the Energy World. The framework remains very much intact. In fact, it's been reinforced by time, but obviously things continue to change. And what we see now is basically a situation where energy is becoming a pretty meaningful problem. What is this? This is a problem that is global, is not isolated in a particular region. It's actually happening in Asia, in China in particular, in Europe, with a lot of tensions with Russia and also the USA. But it's a global problem. It's also a problem that is taking place across the entire energy sector. It's actually natural gas and the electricity sector that are leading the way, following a very cold winter last year. But crude oil is lagging, and there are interrelationships between these commodities, including energy substitution, which are effectively pushing crude oil higher, currently around $80, but with the risk of 100, 120 being quite real, quite possibilities. This comes particularly because at the end of the day, you can't print commodities. Last winter was very cold. Here in Spain, we had a snowstorm that we hadn't seen in over a century, Filomena, and we were trapped pretty much for a month, something unprecedented for Spain, for Madrid, for the entire country. And there's actually a risk, an indication that we might have another very cold winter, which given the situation with the inventories would be very, very difficult. In fact, the inventories are not sufficient, and therefore in commodities, it's going to be a function of higher prices that are going to destroy demand and substitute demand and incentivize supply. But in the short term, those inventories, which are the cushion, are unlikely to be able to give us all the demand at current prices. So something will happen, and watch out for a cold winter, because that could tip the balance. Behind the supply problems, we see the ESG basically narrative. The ESG green initiative means that fossil fuels have had a bad name. So the last few years, the returns have been poor, and that has not attracted a lot of investment. Just a year and a half ago, we're sitting on negative crude oil prices. So how much worse can that be? And looking into the next decade, everything has been about green energy. Therefore, there's a severe problem which is not going to be easy to fix in the short term. And we have some key meetings into next month in Glasgow. And I think this mini energy crisis we're witnessing right now will obviously put into question some of those plans and focus more on energy security and diversification of the pool. The other thing that's happened, obviously, is demand. The recovery with the vaccines, etc., has been actually pretty strong. We still haven't really fully opened the airline space yet. The land transportation has been pretty strong. It led the recovery throughout the first half of the year. People were more keen to go into their individual cars rather than mass transport. But now we're looking into potentially key economies like the US opening up to air traffic, and that could lead to incremental demand, which will need to be satisfied with physical barrels we cannot print. The issue with commodities is, particularly energy, is highly inelastic. There are multiple ways to think about this. It's not a constant number, but you could think roughly that at the current prices, in order to create room for incremental 1%, we might need to see prices about 20% higher. This is how inelastic things are. People are more likely to pay 20% more than stop driving or taking the bus. And what we're seeing as well to compound things is energy hoarding. So China has been on a mission to secure their energy and pretty much at any cost. they've been accumulating LNG, liquefied natural gas, and this is part of the reason why things are quite tight on a global basis. So the situation is dire. It's very fragile to climate. We need to watch out for a cold winter. And I think the key message here is, yes, you can print as many dollars as you want. And the fact that that's created a lot of demand for physical stuff, but you can't print oil or any other commodity for that matter. So in that sense, the supply-demand imbalances, given the current setup, the risks are very skewed for higher. We see, and these are a couple of graphs borrowed from my good friends at Bank of America, how huge the moves have been. Here you see the entire complex. You see, LNG. You see European prices for gas, for electricity. And whilst crude oil is lagging, perhaps crude oil is the one that people pay most attention to, but the rally has been driven by other sectors. This is just, we're talking about, 100, 200, 500, 1,000% increases depending on the commodity and the place. This is obviously huge and is putting a lot of pressure on the consumer, and also in many cases governments that are going to be subsidizing this. We'll talk about China later, and how the fragile China situation is actually potentially being more compounded by a very difficult energy setup. The question is, how high could energy prices go? And this is a great framework, again, from my good friend Francisco Blanch from Merrill, my former colleague. And we went through this in the past. And the idea here is that any given sector has certain limits, upper limits and lower limits, before it actually goes bust or makes the other sectors go bust. And you see that in the 70s and 80s, and then again in 07, 08, it was these very, very high energy prices, which contributed to, they reached, call it 7, 8, 9%. As a percentage of GDP. So out of your $100 of activity, how much was actually, or your pocket money, how much in some ways was going to energy as a proxy. And you see that the current prices are, even if the nominal prices of commodities are higher, you see that the amount of money being printed, it's been ginormous. And as a result, the room for energy prices to go up before we get to a similar level of tension, of tightness, is meaningful. So the potential room for price appreciation is significant based on this parameter. So, at the end of the day, the more dollars you print, if you have the same amount of barrels, then something has to give, and that something is prices. So this is how the monetary printing fits into the equation, which is something that the naked eye will not see, but it's effectively the monetary tide is rising, and this inflationary pressure is coming, and it's obviously having an impact in commodities.